Welcome back to the Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football Podcast. Good evening, everyone. Your host, Dustin Lunt here. I hope everyone's enjoyed the early part of their week so far. We are recording on Tuesday as normal, so it's early for us here. Hope we're all surviving well here, going into week 15 of the NFL. But first, got to introduce my co-host, Jacob Trowbridge. How are you doing, sir?
That sounded so official. You said Jacob, and I'm not used to hearing that second syllable on the name, and it threw me for a loop there for a second. But I am doing fantastic, Dustin. How are you tonight?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I'm happy to be here. Tuesday night podcasting is my favorite night of the middle of the week here, knowing that I have to continue working. So this is always the highlight of my week. Joining us this week, we have a very special guest, Chris Allen. Chris, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. I know if you would ask me probably that same question about maybe a month ago, I'd have been like, God, I can't wait for the season to be over. Because like you hit that lull, like towards the, like, it's not the middle of the season, it's not the end of the season, but you're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's just the grind of season content that making is just where that's where it hits you. But now in like weeks 14 and 15, especially after last night's game, I'm just happy to be like, we're still watching football. I'm excited about the holidays that are coming around here within the next week or so. So I'm pretty amped. Despite, like, if again on any other Tuesday, I'd have been like, gosh, I'm just waiting for the end of the season. But it's good.
This is the start of like mile 22 for a marathon runner.
Yeah, exactly.
You're almost there. You can see it. I'm assuming I'm not a runner or an active person at all.
Experience, but we all know that's bullshit. You've never come close to running a marathon.
It's true, but I've watched some people do it, and it looks very difficult.
I don't even want to try that.
It is, from experience, it is. So, Jake, you are spot on there. We've got a great episode this evening. We are going to be squashing some beefs tonight for our Sunny and Philadelphia fans. You all know what that is. But we are talking about some players here that we've given up on, but have redeemed themselves and started to be fantasy relevant players. So we're forgiving them for their past transgressions. We're on board moving forward here. But before we get into that, Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where people can find you, what you're about, things like that.
Sure. You can find me in quite a few places, actually. I write primarily over at 4for Football. I do the quarterback streaming analysis over there. And then especially over during the off season, I take on the role of director of Best Ball, where I really dig into some of the trends and analysis that goes into best ball strategies, like whether it just be your typical like 12 team type of format. And we've also started looking into tournament strategy now that multiple platforms like Underdog and even DraftKings have started putting out some of their tournaments this past season. So I do a lot more of my off-season research and most of my work over there. But I also contribute over at DLF, do some dynasty stuff over there with my buddy Adam Wilde. I do some work for Numberfire every week. I do some weather analysis over there because that's my Twitter handle at Chris Allen FFWX. The WX portion is for weather, and that's where a lot of people have come to know me over the past few years. Is that's my kind of like my niche thing that I do in the industry. And then of course I'm over at Roto World as well, working with the fellows over there, Hayden Winks, RotoPat. Mr. Josh Norris himself, doing some just like weekly reviews and previews of the Thursday Night Football game. So my schedule is hectic typically, and so like I said, I'm ready for the season to be over, but still just so much information, so much analysis still to be done about the season. So, but yeah, that's where you can find me at. I'm around the industry, pretty much everywhere you can find me.
That is literally true, folks. Chris Allen is the Visa of fantasy football analysts. He is everywhere you want to be. So
yes,
check out all of the things that he's doing. And no wonder you're exhausted, man, at this point in the season.
It feels like, I mean, this is really, I mean, a part-time job that feels like a full-time job. I mean, again, I love it. I mean, the folks that, I mean, just even sitting down and talking with you, I mean, it's still one of those things where the community is what kind of gives us energy, right? I mean, when you get to sit down and talk with folks like yourself, I mean, sitting down and talking with, again, like I mentioned, Hayden Winks, John Daigle over at Roto World, Denny Carter, like every now and again, JJ Zacharyson. I've had phone calls with Evan Silva, like, and Mike Leone and Drew Dinkmeyer, like over at ETR. I mean, it's just you get to, it's like so many faces, so many perspectives, and so much insight from so many talented people in this community. Being able to work for various sites it's been really humbling, because you get to learn so much, like while you're still getting to contribute to some of these places. So it really is an honor to do that.
That's awesome. Well, aside from that, the one thing that I added to the show sheet, Dustin, you and Chris have something in common, which I find fascinating. And we're a drinking podcast, so I had to make sure to call this out, because I saw right in your Twitter profile that you are also into homebrewing. So
yes,
both
sir.
Dustin and Chris, you guys are into homebrewing, and I've never met two people on this podcast together who are into that. And I love it.
Well, forget all that football stuff. Let's talk about that instead. I forget the show sheet. Let's talk about homebrewing, man.
Throw it out.
I'd be down with that. That'd be fun.
Yeah. How long you been homebrewing?
So, about just about 10 years now.
Same.
I still do just the traditional cooler mash tun, single boil kettle. Nothing
Okay.
too fancy.
I just got
very much of the DIY.
Yeah, I got the mash and boil, so an electric system. I just picked that up not a year, 2 years ago, and I find it's been so convenient just to be able to not have to worry about if you brew outside, like in the winter time, it affecting your efficiency. Because I live in Ohio, so basically traditionally, I think after October, I would just stop brewing. And I would just be doing having store-bought from basically October until probably March. And I would just survive off of that. But now that I can literally brew in my office, it's so convenient. It's so much easier for me to actually get some more stuff done. So now that I've done that, I've tacked on the kegerator. I've got 3 kegs sitting in my office. I've been talking with folks when I have more time, when it's not when it's not in season. I've been sending growlers out to people with some samples of stuff that I brew. So it's such a fun hobby. So I'm definitely excited to chop it up with you guys about the football. Home brewing does not even matter to me, man.
I love it, because my favorite part about homebrewing is the fact that Dustin does homebrew so often, and the fact that he lives right next to me. Therefore, I get to sample all of his great beers that he comes.
I'm so
up
jealous.
With. It's like having a friend who has a boat. You don't have to have the boat. You just have to know the person with the boat, and then you get all of the wonderful things. So that's how I feel about it.
You get to reap all the benefits. That's the best part.
I love it. Oh, we lose you there, Dustin. Oh, we lost him. Womp womp. I will.
Oh, wait.
Oh, here he comes.
All right, you got me.
We got you. If you don't need to do video, we can do it without video for yours.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go sans video here. For whatever reason, my internet's being a little wonky, so I'll go sans video to try to help the laptop out. So, I caught what you were saying about brewing in Ohio. We're from Wisconsin here, so I face the similar weather as you, where usually about this time of year I'm done brewing. I'm going to try to squeak a couple more last brew days in here over my winter break from work. I have the next 2 weeks off, so I'm going to try to sneak a couple if the weather warms up decently enough where I'm not going to freeze my ass off. But other than that, I'm pretty well done for the year here too. So, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. I know Jake comes over, watches me do all the work, and he sits back and so it's a good time. I really enjoy it, and it's beer. It's a hobby that gives back to you. Unlike other hobbies where you're spending money like golfing or something, spend money on clubs and you lose balls and whatnot. It's no, I get beer back. It's the best hobby.
Yeah, for maybe 4 or 5 hours of work, maybe tack on an extra hour for like sanitizing and whatnot. I mean, you wind up with conceivably, I mean, theoretically, you're winding up with 5 gallons of beer that you're going to wind up drinking for the next, couple of months or so. Share it with some friends. I don't know if you're into it, Dustin. I mean, I've gone to a couple of competitions, like a few local ones. That's where you get to meet other nerds that are into home brewing. And like, while as enthusiastic as I am about it, I mean, man, you go to a brewing competition, you will meet some people that they dig into the chemistry involved in home brewing. I mean, folks that will debate water profiles and specific temperatures that you need for yeast and even like fermentation profiles in terms of temperature, depending on what style you're brewing. I mean, you can really, depending on how deep you want to go down that rabbit hole, you can do it. But for me, it's just I like drinking beer, obviously, but it's also the social aspect of it too, where you can go back and forth with people that are really into it. And like, again, this is not because I'm like super vain or anything like that, but like the medals that you see like hanging right behind me, these are from like brewing competitions. This happens to be a spot in my office where I can hang them. It's not so that they can be on camera all the time.
Oh, come on. You put them up there special just for us.
No. Like, I've had them there. It just happened to be there. But that's part of the fun, right? Going into competitions and like meeting other home brewers, and then just like, and also getting feedback, right? Because there's so much about your process that goes into home brewing. Same thing where we talk about process when it comes to fantasy football. Like that tie-in. But we always harp on that. And with home brewing, if you have your process down correctly, you're hitting your efficiency numbers, you're getting to the proper ABV or trying to get the right flavor profile. You wind up with a good product, and other people will give you that information back. So very similar to what we do in fantasy football. You can see the same results or similar results if you adhere to good processes when it comes to home brewing.
I love that time.
Absolutely. Yes, that was so smooth. I love that.
Now, I was going to say, I feel like those homebrew competitions have a little bit of a flavor of if you would go to a fantasy football industry event, as they have there. There are some of those. I know there was one in Chicago last year. I did not get to, but I'd imagine there's a little bit of overlap. As you said, maybe the most dedicated of all the folks that show up and are therefore the most passionate about it. So,
yeah, I think I went to the fantasy football. Was it the? Oh my goodness, I cannot remember what the name it was. But it was hosted by Bob Lung up at the Fantasy Football Hall, or no, Fantasy Football Hall of Fame, but the Football Hall of Fame up in Canton, since just a few hours away. Got to meet a lot of the folks that were in the DM thread with. Who was it? J Mike was there, Shane was there, Sipes was there. There were just, so many good folks. Again, and being able to meet face to face with some of the people you talk to almost on a daily basis, talk shop. Just get to know them a little bit more than the tidbits we share once we're online. But again, it's all about that community. It's all about being able to converse with each other as we would want to. Since we spend so much time together online.
Absolutely, man. That's cool. I feel cool just being able to be on the outside of beer nerddom, as it were, and fantasy football nerddom makes me feel the exact same way. So I love it.
All right. So to continue the beer talk here, should we get into what we're drinking this evening?
Let's do it.
Absolutely. Chris, what are you drinking tonight?
All right, Jake, what are you drinking?
Okay. I want to hear from Chris though. I saw you had all those lovely beers now sitting behind you, but I did find out from you earlier that it's really like you kind of get these really cool cans because you're a big fan of the can art, right?
Oh yeah. It could be absolute. Just dog piss in the can. If you've got good can art, I will buy at least 1 6-pack of what you have. I could absolutely hate it, but your can will wind up on that shelf behind me. But yeah, I'm sucked for can art. Actually, what is it? The brewery out in Three Floyds. out in Muncie, Indiana, if I'm remembering the town
Mhm.
name correctly. But I mean, the art on most of their cans is just like, I want that one, I want that one. I think I've got two actually sitting on the shelf behind me from Three Floyds. But this one that I'm drinking is one that I made. It was actually it was a hazy, but I've had it in the keg it's been over 2 months now. So most of the haze is absolutely gone now because it's been sitting there. It's absolutely clear, but the flavor is still pretty decent. So it's a little fruity. It's got some tropical notes to it as well. So I prefer, that's typically my style. I normally brew like New England IPAs, hazy IPAs, like something in that range. It's just my personal preference. But just like Dustin, I'm trying to sneak in another brew day here shortly. I'm going to try and do one on Saturday. I've got a recipe for a winter warmer since it's kind of tis the season to do that, do something like that where it's a little malty, little sweet. So I think that'd be a good beer to kind of sit down and binge watch a few TV shows while I'm off for the next couple of weeks.
Heck yes. Dustin, you are making a winter warmer, in fact. Talk about good timing here.
Something great minds.
That's right.
Yeah. Actually, I just got in the kegs a little while ago, and I've had it aging. I did Imperial Stout, and then what I did is I split it off, and I did half with coffee and vanilla on bourbon chips, and then the other half I did with cherries. So it's a cherry stout, which that I'm really excited for.
See, now we need to. Yeah, we need to send growlers back and forth to figure out some sort of brew share or something like that.
Oh, absolutely! I'm all for that.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna figure this out.
We're making things happening, and I love that you mentioned about New England IPAs being one of your tops because Dustin and I have both had difficulties getting into IPAs initially, and New England hazy or juicy IPAs for me. I'm not smart enough to know all the distinctions there, but I know they all have similarities, and those are the ones that I can get on board with. Now I'm not drinking an IPA tonight. I've gone much darker for tonight's because it's winter. And this is when I love to get some of these really thick guys going. This is actually twofold reasoning here for why I'm drinking this tonight. One, because of the aforementioned can art that you're a fan of. I love this can art. It's ugly sweater weather. It's literally made to look like an ugly sweater.
I love it.
It's fantastic. This was gifted to me actually by Dustin this weekend. So had to get this rocked out here. It's an Imperial brewery. This is from the Fermentorium. So this is actually from, where is this from, Dustin? This is in, Cedarburg, Wisconsin. Okay. Yeah, it's so hidden here, but it is a Wisconsin beer. Not super close to us, but it's local-ish. But it's an Imperial Milk Stout with vanilla, black tea, raisins, figs, and black currants. A lot of things happening with this beer.
Okay.
But it's tasty.
Yeah.
Dustin, what do you got?
I'm drinking somewhat local as well. I'm drinking out of Titletown Brewing in Green Bay. Very appropriate since our Green Bay Packers clinched the division.
Number one, baby.
Again, I'm drinking their Dark Helmet. It is their Schwartz beer, which is a very underrated style. I love it whenever I can get my hands on a good one. And this one is just very delightful.
I love Schwartz beer because I'm a big freaking nerd, and I love the movie Spaceballs, and there's a big whole thing about Schwartz. I don't know if that's ever how this beer got its name, but I like to think that it is.
I would like to think that too, but I mean, yeah, salute to Mel Brooks, King.
Absolutely. One for
absolutely.
my guy. So, Dustin, do we want to get into our drunk trade of the week?
Absolutely. Hit us up, Jake.
All right. I didn't know if you were into it this week or if you're going to be like, no, screw it. I don't want to talk about it this week. Maybe because it hit too close to home. I wasn't sure, so I had to get the A-OK here. This one comes in from Reddit user Papa Willie. We have a fresh batch of submissions to work with here. So Papa Willie says, me and a guy drunk traded at the bar one time. As you. He's a Raiders fan. I'm a Packers fan. So, of course, we're going to talk about this on our podcast as a couple of unabashed Packers homers. But he says it's a keeper league. And this was done in the offseason, the year that Antonio Brown went to the Raiders. I gave him Antonio Brown, and he gave me Davante Adams. That one worked out, he says. And I would say I agree. But
Slightly.
put yourself back into the
Absolutely.
mindset of when this trade happened. I think a lot of us were excited about what could happen when Antonio Brown initially went to the Raiders. Not, of course, once it got deep in there, we know how it all went. But leading up to that, if you looked at this trade, and again, I know it's hard to put ourselves back in that mindset, but like I personally don't think it's an awful trade given the context. What do you think, Chris?
I mean, the way that I look at it is what was the range of outcomes for either of them, assuming everything had gone right. I mean, you're still talking about Antonio Brown being connected to Derek Carr. I mean, in an offense that, like, while we think that they'd be able to put up points, especially considering that they would need to put up points in a division that was going to be featuring, I mean, Patrick Mahomes for one. I mean, and we'll see what the rest of the division was going to shape up to be. But at least we thought that the Chargers would be a decent offense, like going into that season. But he would be attached to Derek Carr, while Davante Adams would still be attached to Aaron Rodgers. So the delta in quarterback play, I think at least would be enough to, for me to kind of, for me to wrinkle my nose at it. But then also projectable target share. I mean, we're looking at Davante Adams, who was already coming off of a decent season, where he was ascending in target share. I mean, somewhere between 27 and 29%. Like on his own team, and we didn't see much in terms of the Packers adding more wide receivers or competition for targets in that offense. Where the Raiders, on the other hand, I mean, they were looking like they were looking to add pieces at that point. They wanted to try and make a push in order to become more competent within the AFC West. So even if Antonio Brown, we want to assume that he's going to be the man, because he is Antonio Brown. I mean, even still, that seemed kind of shaky to me, because he wasn't going to be a target hog within his offense, just considering the rest of the pieces around him. He might be good. I mean, a 20 to 25% target share, but I don't think he was going to ever compare to Davante Adams. So, I mean, with the difference in quarterback, the difference in projectable targets, I mean, in no way, shape, or form could I ever see Antonio Brown having the type of season that Davante Adams would have had, what we expect him to have, and the heights that he's reached so far this season. That's just, I couldn't have seen it.
I like that it came from you, so that way it feels unbiased.
I mean,
we can put it out there.
Considering what team is that on the,
We don't need to talk about that for right now. I think I just highlighted it more by doing that. Actually, I literally just highlighted the G and trying to cover it up. Yeah, no, we do not hide our Packers fandom here at all. But it is nice to get somebody who's not come in and say that exact same thing. So, yeah, I think we can all agree here on this that obviously with hindsight and even without it, this one was Davante, and I feel bad. This is probably why you don't, if you're the other guy, drunk trade. But this is also why you do drunk trade if you're the guy who made the submission, because sometimes you get things like this. But in any case, now we do have a beer bet here that we get to pay out from last week. So I'm going to give the quick rundown here. Dustin, the man without a face for right now, is on the receiving end. So it's probably for the best that I have to pay out, because I would need to see his face if he was the one paying it out here. But just to recap for our listeners who were not with us last week, we made a bet with a Derek Carr versus Phillip Rivers basis to it. Who is going to get more total fantasy points? So I and our guest from last week, Chase, this is just to prep you here, Chris. If you want to get involved in one at the end, you're welcome to. So
all right.
Get it in your head whether you do or don't, whether you're ready to take this on after seeing this. But
okay,
we chose Phillip Rivers, and Dustin took Derek Carr. Derek Carr finished the week with 25.8 fantasy points. Phillip Rivers finished with 17.7. So that one was not particularly close for us. and therefore I will be paying out. Dustin, do you want to take a second gloat? You can.
Oh, I do. It's tough being this good. I know I went on a little bit of a losing streak there a couple weeks in a row, but the cream always rises to the top in the end. So, Jake, I'm just waiting to hear those glorious words out of your mouth.
The cream always rises to the top. Hey, that's why I'm drinking coffee cream liqueur for a nice smooth shot to pay this one off. It'll go down. It'll help me choke down these words that I'm about to say. Dustin, you are a fantastic and brilliant fantasy football prognosticator / genius. Kudos to you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was actually really pleasant. So I feel like we're both winners after that, honestly. All right. We did it. We've taken care of our business, but now we have to get into some actual fantasy football discussion here. Dustin, do you want to run us through this brief injury update here?
Yeah, I'll take us through the injuries here quickly. It doesn't sound like any of these are overly serious. Players might miss this next week, so definitely keep your eyes open. But we got Matt Stafford. I know he had a rib injury. Devontae Parker, Jakeem Grant, both of the Dolphins. They had, I believe it was hamstring injuries, if I'm remembering this correctly. Mike Gesicki looks like he is going to miss this week, so definitely keep an eye on that. Deebo Samuel with a hamstring. Not sure if he's been ruled out yet or not, but keep your eyes open. Alex Smith, lower leg injury. When I saw that, I got a little worried. It was like deja vu all over again. Thankfully, it doesn't appear serious, so stay strong, Alex. And then not that this one is necessarily hugely fantasy relevant, but it could be here going into week 15. Brandon Allen did leave the game, but doesn't look like it was too serious. Anything either of you want to add about those injuries?
Lynn Bowden's interesting. That's what I'll add. Lynn Bowden's interesting for this week if he hasn't already been scooped off of waivers. Then I'd be, if you have any dollars left, if you're a fab system or whatever, just throw it all on him for this week, basically.
Yep. And then Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver 1 this week.
Ooh, I like it. Mm-hmm. I like it a lot. All right.
So do I.
Well, before we get into the meat of the episode, the beef of the episode, if you will, this week's episode of DTFF is brought to you by Monkey Knife Fight. They are a daily fantasy sports gaming website for casual sports fans. They're simple, fun, easy to play. It's so simple. They're daily fantasy prop games, similar to salary cap-based DFS games, but without the algorithms, lineups, and most importantly, sharks. So this is simple as choosing more or less for a specific contest line or group of lines that you get. And if you choose the right one, you get money. It is as simple as that. You can start off now with 100% instant match bonus up to $50 if you use promo code DTFF. Dustin.
All right. Thank you, Jake. Definitely check them out. They are a lot of fun. I put bets down pretty much every week here during the football season, and it just adds a little something, little extra spice to the week for football. So definitely check them out. We love having them as a sponsor. So on to the heart of the episode here, squashing some beefs. So as I said at the top of the show here, these are players that we've given up on, left them for dead. Lots of anger towards them for failing us and breaking our hearts for fantasy-related play. But they've redeemed themselves for this year, and now we're forgiving them. So, Chris, lay us with your player.
So my player is Josh Allen, and for all of the Bills Mafia folks that are listening to us, I'm on the wagon, man. I'm on the wagon. I'm ready to hop through a burning table with all the rest of you crazy people that are out there doing your pregame antics. I'm in on it. But I mean, if we looked at Josh Allen's 2019 season objectively, I mean, we'd be hard pressed to believe that this was going to be a guy that could do such a complete 180. I mean, he's still like the quarterback 5 like on this season, but the thing that's remarkable is just in how he's done it. I mean, give credit to Brian Dable, Sean McDermott. I mean, pretty much that entire offensive staff in terms of, I guess, taking him to the next level in terms of working with him on his throwing mechanics. I think Chris Collinsworth had a great breakdown on, I believe it was a Sunday Night Football, in how they've kind of broken down like his throwing mechanics and making sure that he gets his hips open and stepping through his throws and getting the right velocity on some of his passes. Because in 2019, I mean, he was bad. I mean, the whole offense was really kind of suffering behind it. I mean, they were 24th in neutral passing rate, 27th in offensive yards per drive. I mean, and 27th in red zone passing rate. I mean, this was a team, like, by and large, that, I mean, unless you were playing Josh Allen, and that was mostly because of his legs, I mean, you weren't getting much fantasy production. I mean, I remember, what was it, the Thanksgiving game when like Cole Beasley went off against the Houston Texans. I mean, you might get those one-offs every now and again, but it was mostly just due to Josh Allen's production. I mean, he was, I think, first or second in rushing attempts, like, for quarterbacks, like, overall. Inside the 20, I think he was ahead of Lamar in rushing attempts, but Lamar had him in touchdowns. I mean, he was producing, he was giving us that hashtag Konami code that we want from a fantasy football quarterback. But still, like, we couldn't expect him to duplicate that, just given the number of, I think he had 14 fumbles like last season. I think he only lost like 4 of them, but it was just that constant roller coaster that you would get when you played Josh Allen. And then from week 1 this season, it's just been a complete 180 reverse. I mean, they're now top 10 in almost every single metric that you would want from an offense. I mean, they're 3rd in neutral passing rate, 4th in offensive yards per drive, 7th, and Josh Allen's now 7th in on-target percentage for his throws. I mean, this is the same guy that we were thinking that, despite the fact that he had a cannon for an arm, he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, whether it was 5 feet in front of him or 500 yards in front of him. It didn't matter. So I give a lot of credit, and I will definitely take the L on the fact that, I mean, I still drafted him like quite a bit, like in best ball leagues, because I didn't want to have to be the one to find out when to start him and when those blow up weeks would happen. But from a season long standpoint, I didn't want to have to, start him 1 week, watch him flail against or like a tough defense. Like, if you had told me that he was going to come up against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense in a primetime game and then still wind up with a top 12 fantasy performance, I would have told you were nuts. I would have bet against you and wound up losing all of my money. But now, I mean, this is now a team that, like, on the season, he's now 5th. I think he's 5th in EPA per play and also 5th in completion percentage over expected. I mean, that's amongst like all quarterbacks. I mean, he's now competing with the Aaron Rodgers, the Patrick Mahomes, the Russell Wilsons of the league. And this was a guy that we were essentially, from a real football perspective, he was objectively being laughed out of the league. So, I mean, this is, I think, a very, I mean, from a football development perspective, I mean, the award for comeback player of the year has already been locked up. I mean, since Alex Smith took like one step like onto the football field, that award has been locked up. But if we didn't have that to contend with, I mean, I would look at Josh Allen as being like a legitimate comeback player of the year because of kind of where we left him at the end of 2019, where we left the entire Bills offense at the end of the season, where even with Tom Brady leaving the Patriots, and then Cam Newton kind of sliding into the quarterback position, like we were still giving the Patriots odds for being the playoff contenders, Super Bowl contenders still, just because they were the Patriots. But now, I mean, the Bills have essentially locked up their division. I mean, while they're not talking about, we're already talking about them having an extended playoff run, just given the division. I mean, it's going to wind up, I can definitely see it being a Bills versus Chiefs for the AFC. And again, if we had talked about this a year ago, I would have told you that's not possible. So at least from my standpoint, and again, objectively looking at like where Josh Allen was literally a year ago from today and where he's at right now, I mean, you have to give him credit for improving as a passer, for the Bills the offensive coordinator, the head coach, in seeing and believing in Josh Allen and wanting to work with him instead of masking his deficiencies. They wanted to work with him. And now, I mean, especially, and we haven't even talked about them adding Stephon Diggs into the lineup, which has been a huge boost like for their team in terms of being able to separate route running. I mean, he's one of the best receivers in the league. We don't really need to spend a ton of time on him, but still, I mean, just what that entire offense has done and what the entire team has done in order to put them in this position now to, again, I think they're legit Super Bowl contenders for 2020. And I think a lot of it comes on Josh Allen's arm.
I have to agree with that. I mean, I had just blown my own mind away a few days ago looking up Josh Allen's completion percentage. And I couldn't believe that he was sitting there at a 70% basically completion percentage. And this is the same guy, last year sitting at about 58%, right around that realm. And it's, you of course, like you said, you got to talk about the fact that Stephon Diggs is there. But yeah, the fact that he's doing this without John Brown there for these weeks too, it is impressive that he still doesn't really have the whole gang together. And what's going to happen now that everybody is back there? Oh, man. But you were definitely in good company and not being all aboard the Josh Allen train. I have to say that, myself included.
Yeah, and it's just amazing how having Stephon Diggs there is really just transformed that offense, man. I did not expect that. That was one player I was really fading, along with a lot of people, I think, going into this this season here. And yeah, he is that whole team. I'm a believer of that whole team now, man. That is they have something special going on there, and it's fun to see.
For sure. Now, it's not fun to see, if I can segue right into mine here, Dustin.
I chuckled when I saw your player on here, Jake.
I did too.
Just because we have talked about this player so much over the last couple of years. So it just makes me chuckle that he's back on the show sheet once again. So Jake, let us know who you're talking about here.
We couldn't have this segment if I didn't bring up this person. So he is the 2018 sleeper breakout projection. He is the 2019 drinking buddy. He is the 2019 beer bet against Dustin. Who would perform better, him or Sammy Watkins? Yeah, that's also a gross name. And yes, this player performed better, but he was still wide receiver 34 at the end of last year. Coming from the Jets, it is Robbie Anderson, who, by all accounts, you have to say, if nothing else, has put together a solid fantasy season here. He's sitting at wide receiver 14. It doesn't always feel like he's wide receiver 14 still, so I'll give people that. But just looking at where I left him when I did fully boot him out of my fantasy car, as it were, alongside the desert stretch of road, he has shown with a new offense, which I was concerned about, that he can be actually somewhat consistent as long as he's consistently involved and consistently targeted, which he has been, shockingly, this year. He can be consistent. Yeah, his touchdowns are not what you want. He's had 2 this year, 1 in week 1, 1 in week 12. That's a pretty big gap. But even without touchdowns, he is putting together a nice bit of success. There's been some lulls, but he's only had 3 games with fewer than 8 targets on the season, which is shocking comparing what his situation was with the Jets, who it didn't seem could ever really utilize him until the fantasy playoffs came around. He kind of had that Derrick Henry thing going where he was only really for like the 1 year that happened with Derrick Henry, where he was only relevant for the fantasy playoffs. 2 years in a row with Robbie. And, getting a quarterback like Teddy Bridgewater, I also didn't expect him to open up Robbie Anderson as a quarterback who was perceived, at least by me, to be kind of a safe dink and dunk guy, looking at what he did with Minnesota. It's honestly been impressive, and it's sad because, there was no way in hell I was going to have a single team that featured Robbie Anderson on it this year, just based off how often and how deeply he's hurt me in the past. But that's on me. That's not on you, Robbie, because you have looked fantastic here this year.
Well, he got out from the shadow of Adam Gase, so that's why he's performing well. We've seen it, multiple players. We just know that's going to be a thing. So I take it that's the reason why. Also, it is a much better situation. Let's be honest.
That's true. It's just that I still go back to the summertime. I had a number of conversations with like Sigmund Bloom and like a couple other folks just regarding what that Carolina offense was going to look like once he got added. Because if you looked at, and again, I still stand on this idea that if you had told me again that at the end of this season, Robbie Anderson would be essentially the team's wide receiver one, whereas Curtis Samuel, he still gets to play that, wide receiver gadget role because he's a converted running back out of Ohio State. But then it's DJ Moore is the one we're kind of looking at as like, where does he fit within this offense? Again, if you had bet me that, I would have lost all my money, because if you looked at how he was used in New York, I mean, he had an ADOT of 15, I believe, like when he was still in New York. So once he comes over to Carolina, I'm sitting here thinking, well, the way he's been traditionally used and what Teddy does well, I mean, that doesn't click. But what Teddy does well in terms of working within the short and intermediate areas of the field, and what DJ Moore did well over the past 2 seasons prior to with Cam Newton, that fits. So that's a match made in heaven. So just give me all the DJ Moore. But they flipped. I mean, DJ Moore's ADOT, like he went from, I believe, like a 9.2 or something like that in 2019, and now it's 13. And now it's Robbie Anderson that drops from 15.0 ADOT, I think, down to around like 9 or something, 9 and some change. So it's like their usage, their route tree, I mean, their slot rates, I mean, all of that stuff is completely flipped to favoring Robbie Anderson, where it's just, again, from a talent perspective, I would have said DJ Moore, wide receiver one, lock it in. Let's just go ahead and draft DJ Moore in the 3rd round and we'll just be done with it. And then we'll figure out Curtis Samuel and Robbie Anderson afterwards. And I did not see this coming. I mean, for me, I'm hard pressed to believe that there were signs that we could have seen this coming, just a complete switch and role reversal. But now that we know, and we know that Robbie Anderson, but I guess it goes back to that thing where if you know the receiver is talented, you'll know that coaches can find a way to use them. And just like you said, Dustin, I mean, Adam Gase, I mean, we know that he doesn't know how to use his own players. I mean, after Frank Gore got concussed, and then we saw the backup running backs come in and almost get like 100 yards apiece afterwards. I mean, that just goes to show you like how little Adam Gase knows about just scouting out his own players. But I mean, Robbie Anderson, I mean, is just another player on the long list of guys that we see them bounce back and we see them become like more used like on their teams after leaving Adam Gase. And I mean, with Robbie Anderson as talented as we knew he could be, you fit him with an offensive minded staff in Matt Rule and Joe Brady. I mean, it's a match made in heaven. It had to have been a match made in heaven for them. I mean, considering they already had the connection with Robbie Anderson, like from back from college. So it's just all that was there.
I remember talking about that connection and just thinking, oh, this is one of those that's going to be so overblown. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those, it's a narrative that doesn't really hold any weight. And we want to believe that more than anything. And that's like, well, maybe that actually did come true. It's really shocking. And the other kind of shocking thing is, wait, does this mean that maybe this is how this team preferred to utilize DJ Moore all this time? And maybe Curtis Samuel wasn't as good as Robbie in the situations that he is now, to where they felt comfortable doing that? Or are they just, do they perceive Robbie Anderson to be so much more talented all around? It almost begs more questions than answers, kind of like you were saying before. Yeah. You couldn't predict this because so many things flip-flopped, and it's bizarre. It's bizarre, but now going into next year, I'm not going to be able to discount Robbie Anderson.
Right. And that'll be really interesting to see how their ADPs kind of shake out, like in redraft and best ball over the offseason. Because I'm assuming Robbie Anderson will be the wide receiver one, quote unquote, in terms of ADP. But like, then where do you take the other two? I would think they'd almost come like almost right in order, like almost maybe let's say Robbie Anderson in the 4th, maybe DJ Moore in the 5th, and then Curtis Samuel in the 6th. They'd almost go like one right after the other. I would think, just given their usage, and we haven't even talked about how CMC is going to fit back into the offense in 2021. But man, it's going to be hard to kind of suss out which one of those guys do you want on your team from a start sit perspective. And man, sitting right now, I have no idea how I'm going to approach it next year.
Same.
Yeah, absolutely. And didn't they, if my memory serves me correct, didn't they sign Robbie Anderson like right away once free agency started?
It was like very soon afterwards, because I think it was about the same time that They got Teddy and Robbie, I want to say within like a few weeks, if I'm not mistaken, because I wrote a piece on Teddy Bridgewater's impact going to Carolina for 4 back in, I want to say April and May. And by that time, they had already signed Robbie. And so I want to say it was like fairly close together when they got the two.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like, I mean, to me, I would guess that Matt Rule kind of came in with a plan to pick, I mean, to get those guys. And it was just like, here, these guys, like I know what they can do. I know that they're playmakers. I know that they can fit inside of my offensive scheme. So let's start, adding some of those pieces and making sure that we can do that in order to, I guess, execute like this plan that I kind of have. And for the most part, I think it's been okay. But again, if you look at the division that they play in, the offenses that they have to play, twice a season. I mean, if you're going up against, I mean, the Saints, the Bucks, and then Atlanta, if they were good, I mean, twice a season. I mean, right. you would expect to have a rough time anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, my player that I am forgiving, I'm squashing the beef with, is Corey Davis, and I feel like there's probably a lot of people on this boat with me, and that's fine. I'll admit I was never a big fan of his coming out of college. And he kind of bared that out over his first few years. But the thing with Corey Davis, he's done really well this year, currently sitting at wide receiver 29 in PPR, which I think is leaps and bounds above what anybody expected going into this season. And the thing with Corey Davis is basically all the metrics across the board have been improving every single year he's been in the league. His yards per target, his catch percentage, yards on the season. He's matched his season total for touchdowns already. His yards from scrimmage. I mean, basically every metric you want to look at, he's been improving every single year. And we really saw the turnaround last year when Tannehill took over. Surprise, surprise, you get a competent quarterback on your team. And I know Jake and I have talked about this as well, is that maybe he isn't meant to be the alpha wide receiver 1 on the team. Maybe this is his role as just a solid wide receiver 2 and let AJ Brown take all the, hardcore coverage since he is a beast of a man. And then Corey Davis comes in with that, second cornerback on the team or the slot cornerback and let him do his work there. And I think this is what we can expect from him moving forward, as long, Tannehill's on the team for the next few years. AJ Brown still on his rookie contract. I would expect the Titans to re-sign him. Obviously, we don't know if that's going to happen yet. But yeah, I think what we're seeing this year is probably what we can expect moving forward from Corey Davis.
And I'm starting to even reconsider if, because we had said that, like, yeah, maybe he's just a good number 2, kind of like how Juju was, not the same player, obviously, but like Juju, maybe he doesn't need to be the top guy and he can be just as relevant. And it's almost like it's gotten to the point now where I'm thinking, like, from a fantasy perspective, Corey Davis could end up being a actual wide receiver 2 for you in fantasy next year. Obviously, it's going to depend a lot on what happens with his actual situation, if he sticks around, if he does end up getting moved. But supposing that he stays with the Titans, it's like, I don't think he'll ever be drafted like that, but you almost have to say that he falls in that range because he is falling in that range right now. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look back at, so I had to look it up real quick just to make sure who else was in his class. But that 2017 class, I always kind of thought that he was overdrafted. But then if you look at the rest of the guys that was in his class, I mean, you can't really pick out too many other like wide receiver 1s, at least looking at kind of where they're at today. I mean, yeah, Kenny Golladay was still a part of that class. Chris Godwin was a part of that class. I mean, but other than that, you're looking at Taywan Taylor, Cooper Kupp, Juju Smith-Schuster, Curtis Samuel, Zay Jones, John Ross, Mike Williams. So, I mean, there are a lot of names in there that are good, like ancillary pieces, but in terms of actual like alphas, like in that class, I mean, Corey Davis would obviously stick out just based off of like his athletic traits. I mean, size, speed, like that sort of thing. So I understand like why he was overdrafted based on when he came out. I think if he had gone maybe a year earlier or a year later, we might have actually been able to properly value him. But I mean, I think he always should have been posted next to an alpha like on that team. I don't think he can function like on his own. And I think with AJ Brown like being a part of that offense, I'm hoping that he winds up working out a deal and staying in Tennessee, because I think he's perfect for that offense. Like being able to work as like either on the perimeter, but especially as a big slot. I mean, I think that's the absolute like prime role like for him to work as. And I think we're seeing that come to fruition with him being able to, I mean, essentially match AJ Brown in targets, touches, like that sort of thing. But it's just really just the touchdowns that it comes down to, which is the thing we want the most in fantasy anyway. But still, from a production standpoint, I think Corey Davis is definitely a value right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you agree with me. That makes me feel good. All right. Do you guys have any other players you want to squash beefs with, or should we move on to our starts and busts of the week?
I feel like we've squashed some good beef.
Yeah.
You know, the beef is thin for the most part. You know, it's like we squashed some Kobe beef too. I feel like we did really good cuts, if you will. I'm going to stop talking in beef puns because I think everybody, including the two of you, would appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
I was just going to wait to see how many more you can come up with on the fly.
That was going to be it. That was going to be the absolute maximum.
Fair enough.
All right. So starts of the week here. Chris, hit us.
All right. So again, because I do the quarterback streaming column, it's just easy for me to just kind of think of things in terms of the passing game, which I mean, most productions connect to the quarterback anyway. But for this week, I mean, Phillip Rivers going against the Texans. I mean, we just saw, I mean, the Texans had no answer for Mitchell Trubisky. In the year of our Lord 2020, a defense not having an answer for Mitchell freaking Trubisky, I mean, is just that's a next level sentence that I just had to utter out loud twice. And so now Phillip Rivers, who has now been hot for 4 straight games, I believe his floor has been somewhere around 17, 18 points, which I mean, depending on scoring in that week, could fluctuate anywhere from quarterback like 10 to 12 to quarterback 16. But at least he's providing enough production in order to get you by. From a passing standpoint, T.Y. Hilton has now gone off in back-to-back weeks. So now we're seeing more production out of him. Jonathan Taylor, we just saw him with that monstrous 2-touchdown performance. So the running game is also taking off. So from a yards per drive perspective, I want to say Colts are at least top 10, if not top 5. I think they're averaging somewhere between 30 and 40 yards per drive over the past 4 weeks. So, I mean, with the Texans out, I mean, Bradley Roby's out. I mean, their pass rush, I mean, Whitney Merciless is doing absolutely nothing as a pass rusher. It's really just J.J. Watt or nothing. So, I mean, just give me Phillip Rivers and T.Y. Hilton against the Texans secondary all day long. So I think he's the best start of this week.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, Jake, what do you have?
I also just want to say that this will avenge me if Phillip Rivers does this week.
For your beer bet last, that's right.
Yeah, it's going to avenge me from the beer bet. I feel like I'll take some solace in this when this eventually pans out, because it just has to. Because
you meant to say the beer bet was for this week, not last week, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I don't want to be that guy who falls through into technicalities, so I'll let him pretend that he won. Just
exactly.
Soothe his soul, because I'm so nice. My start of the week this week, ridiculous. My start of the week is Mike Davis. I'm on this track, and I'm going to be on this track until it's shifted, and nobody shifted it for me. It's start your running back against Green Bay, because any warm body going against them for right now, especially if they're an even okay pass catcher, has done just fine against the Packers. One weird exception was Miles Sanders a couple of weeks ago, and even he had a fine day, but that was pre-breakout here from this past week for Miles Sanders. But yeah, I think Mike Davis, because CMC is already not going to play. So sorry to everybody who was hoping to get him back for your late stretch playoff run. That unfortunately is not going to happen. So you got to figure he's just out for the season at this point. But Mike Davis, very capable. And that's all you need to be against this defense right now is to be capable. And he is getting targets, and he is getting touchdowns for you. And really, at this point, you can't even be that picky if there's a capable running back that's available for you. And easily for me right now, he is high-end RB2 going against them. Because it's just great. That matchup, unfortunately, is just too great to ever sit somebody against him.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And my start of the week, Chris, you mentioned this earlier in the episode, but it's Brandon Ayuk going against Dallas. Their defense is just terrible. Second half of the season, the Cowboys are ranked 23rd against the pass, so really bad. And with Debo probably missing this week and George Kittle still out, they got to throw to someone, and it's going to be Ayuk. And let's be honest, this guy's been on fire the last 5 or 6 weeks of the season, just producing out of his freaking mind. So no reason that does not continue this week against a bad Dallas defense, I should say.
Just going to throw that out there to kind of to add to that Brandon Ayuk call. I mean, listen to some of these receivers that compare well to Brandon Ayuk and some of their production like over the past few weeks. So let's see, Adam Thielen, week 11, 123 and 2. Let's see, Calvin Ridley. This was early in the season, 9 for 109 and 2. Robert Woods, 8 for 105 and 0. Tyler Lockett went for 1,103 against him. Even Juju Smith-Schuster was 7 for 93 and 1 against them. I mean, these are the types of receivers that have been going off, and we know where Brandon Ayuk plays within that offense. So, I mean, this to me, it feels like it's too much of a slam dunk. I'm probably jinxing it at this point. But again, I'll just say it, Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver 1.
No, I love it. Okay, Chris, hit us with your bust of the week.
So back to quarterbacks. My bust of the week is Matt Ryan. I mean, it more or less hinges on whether or not Julio Jones is going to play. But even if he's let's say less than 50% or doesn't play his full complement of snaps, I mean, we've seen just Matt Ryan completely flounder in those types of situations. Like when Julio Jones has been out or when he's played less than 50% of the snaps, Matt Ryan has thrown, I believe, 5 interceptions, just 3 touchdowns in those games. And I believe that's over a 5-game sample, because I believe like Julio Jones has missed 3 games this season and been unhealthy or missed time in 2 of them. So, I mean, with the Bucs having like one of their top 5 in pressure rate, like in the league right now, their secondary is still bad. Like they still can be beaten in the secondary, but we just saw Kirk Cousins, I mean, with their porous offensive line, have some issues against them this past week. So if Julio Jones sits, or if we don't really see him get to even a full practice, or we just see like the limited practices, but the team is saying that he's good to go and he should be ready to play on Sunday, I still can't trust Matt Ryan, especially here in week 15 after what just happened. And Calvin Ridley, I believe he left that game. I think he returned to the game, but he was still shaken up and grabbed that same ankle that's been bothering him for weeks. And Todd Gurley hasn't been giving us like any production for, let's say, since like week 6 or so. I mean, so with that whole offense like pretty much ailing, I can't bring it in myself to start Matt Ryan this week. I would rather start like Phillip Rivers or like anybody that's on the waiver wire at this point.
Yeah, which is sad.
Yeah,
I mean, he's been. I know he's had his up and down seasons, but really, you could at least count on him to put up a semi decent week. He usually didn't bust too often, and this season has just been awful. Just awful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this was a passing game that we were excited to see. I mean, they were featuring, 2 top-tier wide receivers in Julio and Calvin Ridley. The addition of Hayden Hurst, like while I thought they might have overpaid for Hurst, I still thought that was going to be a good call for them and like a good addition, considering that with, let's see, they just had, who was it? Austin Hooper. He went from the Falcons over to the Browns. So, I mean, I thought that offense was going to continue to cook. I mean, especially they also ended 2019, I think it was like top 5, top 6 in neutral passing rate. So it's just like all signs pointed to them having a productive season. It's just completely gone off the rails.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me so sad. He was one of my favorite guys coming into this year, but yeah it's unfortunate. Now I had in my spot as my bust, I had Mike Gesicki just on the off chance in case he did end up playing. I wanted to still temper some folks' expectations because you just saw a massive game from him this past week, and he looked great. And Dustin, I have to give it to you. You've been all in on Gesicki this whole time. I was not a believer. He made a believer out of me last week, but going against New England this week, I was not going to be a fan. So I'm going to pivot, however, this week to the entire backfield that is playing Pittsburgh. So any Cincinnati running back that decides to start this week, whoever it is, if Gio Bernard suits up, sit Gio Bernard. Or maybe you can't sit him, but don't expect the world from Gio Bernard. If Travion Williams somehow gets the call up, because it seems like we could be trending that way right now, I know it's exciting because it's a new piece that you're able to pick up off the waiver wire and you get a starting running back, but do not expect him to come in and crush against Pittsburgh. That doesn't happen. They are tops against opposing running backs. We just saw what they did to Buffalo this past week. I'm not saying that obviously Devin Singletary and Zach Moss are world-beating running backs, but they got stymied, and that's what happens to every running back that steps in against Pittsburgh. Some of these stats where you say, oh, they're the absolute best against such and such position, they can be inflated because of what their strength of schedule looked like and all that. That's not the case for Pittsburgh. They are second toughest, and that's for a reason. So watch out.
All right. And then my bust of the week this week is Alvin Kamara going against the Kansas City Chiefs. Over the last month, the Chiefs have been inside the top 10 against running backs. And I just don't like how this backfield has been shaking out since Taysom Hill has taken hold of the starting quarterback role. And we saw Latavius Murray's been getting more run. So I'm not quite sure why that's all happening, why they aren't using their best running back, but against a KC defense that has really been stepping it up here late in the season, I think he definitely should not have high expectations going into this week.
It took how many weeks of Taysom starting for Alvin Kamara to start having like a significant target share in that offense? It was just this past week I thought when he had more than 5 targets. Yep. So it's difficult. It is very difficult to trust him this week.
Mm-hmm.
Feels gross, honestly.
It does. It does.
Now, real quick, before we transition, we are going to throw down a beer bet here. And Chris, you can wait to see what the beer bet is here before you
I'll
actually
wait and see. I mean, I'm a gambling man, so I'll probably hop in, but still.
I like it. Last week's guest, Chase Vernon, also lost. He was on my side, and he said he wanted to pop in here to pay his due respects to Dustin. Does he happen to be sitting in backstage right now?
No, he popped on for a hot second and then jumped off. So I don't know what's happening there.
Well, then I'm going to pass along I'll pass along his good words for you that he wanted to do the shot in your honor. I hope that wherever he is right now, he's doing the shot. There he is.
Speak of the devil.
Look at him.
Oh, God. Look at him.
Look at him.
Hey, Chris, thank you so much for that intro.
Chase, I believe you have something that you want to say and do for our host here.
Oh, liars. No, I'm just kidding. Dusty, man, we did a bet last week, and I doubted your side of the bet tremendously. Like, I didn't take you seriously. I thought you were a joke. And obviously I am the joke, not you. Not you, my friend. I am the joke. Went against my brand, went against my family, man. And the reality is you're way smarter than I am at fantasy football. You're better. And if I ever saw you, I'd get on my knees in a heartbeat. So cheers.
Wow.
Regardless of the situation.
Well done.
Recorded that.
Well, that's in here forever.
That's right.
Chase, you're a man of your word, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate you, falling on the sword with me here.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't make it earlier. It's a little bit early for my take. I have to, in order to swallow my pride, it takes me a little bit longer.
Well, you got to the point that we needed you to get to, and I think that's what's important here.
Real quick, can I just let everybody know that Chris is coming on with us? He's putting his holidays aside and coming on with us on the 23rd, right?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Yeah,
I'm really
Wednesday.
looking forward to it.
I feel like you just got entrapped live on our podcast
No.
to another podcast.
We had talked. What was it, last week? I think it was last week of the week. Yeah, so we'd already talked. So I'm not getting pressured into doing it. Or I'd be like, no, man, I got to check my schedule. Let me make sure, the holidays, But no, we're
Trust me, there's always a hotel room you can bail to make sure that you can avoid doing this.
Blink twice if you don't actually want to do this.
No, Drake.
Yeah.
But no, yes, please check him out on Chase's podcast, of course.
Not
on
this
the
Wednesday, but the next Wednesday. This
next
Wednesday we
Wednesday
just have somebody named Scott Fish. That's no big deal.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
I gotta follow up fish. Oh, come on, man. What is this?
Love
Lord.
you, Chris, man, and I love this podcast. Every chance I get, I'll rewatch it, even if I miss the live feed. I'll rewatch it every time, man. You guys are so much fun. Like I enjoy this podcast more than any other, for real.
Oh,
Appreciate
thanks
you,
for that.
Chase.
So
Thank
much
you.
love. I love it.
Thank you for coming on. And thank you for demonstrating for Chris what can happen if he chooses the wrong side of this beer bet coming up. So
Oh man.
it's a PSA as well as a how do you do. So thank you, Chase. Now, speaking of, Dustin, are you ready? I have a proposal this week.
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
I'm
so now we always, and Chase, if you want to get back on this just to do it, you're more than welcome to, because you've already paid your dues here. So now, Chris, what we do is we do pick a single matchup from the week and we go head to head positionally. Okay. So we pick a game and then we pick a position and we put those two against each other and we'll see who comes out. Now, so last week, of course, it was Phillip Rivers versus Derek Carr.
Okay.
This week, I'm going NFC North divisionally here. I want to know whether it's Justin Jefferson or it's Allen Robinson that ends up with the best day. Chicago, Minnesota play each other Sunday at noon. Dustin, as the host and as the recipient here, who would you like out of that group?
Oof. I can't go against Justin Jefferson. Kid's been on fire.
That's fair. You're locking it in for Justin?
That's right.
The Dustin-Justin connection is happening for this week's beer bet. I like it.
How long you been waiting to say that? Come on now.
And forever.
All right.
Finally got to
He
break
played
it out.
it 3 weeks ago when he saw the schedule.
That one's been in drafts for weeks. Just been waiting to throw it out there.
It really has. I can finally delete it. Whew, that's a load off of my mind. So I will then be absorbing the Allen Robinson side of that, which I'm fine with. Honestly, I honestly do feel like matchup-wise, I can see either side of this pretty easily. I probably would have preferred Justin Jefferson, but I will take Allen Robinson. Chris, are you feeling a side of this particularly?
Not particularly, but I will say that I have been a fan of Allen Robinson for years. So while I've been practicing my gritty dance for the past few weeks, I would still have to go with Allen Robinson in this matchup for sure.
I like it. Or is this a bad omen because people who side with me tend to not do very well?
You tell me this now?
I mean, you just saw it with Chase. Chase sided with me.
Yeah, I really want to know what happened with that because I definitely wrote the show notes that I had Derek Carr.
We did. I verified
How
it.
did
I
I go to
verified
the other side?
You wrote Derek Carr's name on the show notes, and then you even were going to say Derek Carr's at the beginning of it, and then you somehow reversed course during the middle of it. I think I convinced you to side with Phillip Rivers, and then you went all in on Phillip Rivers. Are you willing to double down this week now after you just paid off from last week, Chase?
Oh no!
Okay.
Wait.
Okay.
Yes, I have. Wait, what? Who are we talking about?
Are you wanting
witchcraft put on me
Since
now.
you're in here, do you want a part of this bet of Allen Robinson versus Justin Jefferson?
Yeah, I'm taking the Allen Robinson side.
That's a 3-1. That's a 3-1, Dustin.
Smart
you are either
man.
going to be so happy, and your pants are going to be the tightest they've ever been when all three of us have to bow down to you next week, or you're going to be hurting.
Oh my gosh.
This is going to work out, fellas. Trust me, it's going to work out.
Chris, I appreciate your confidence on this because I need
it's 3 against 1. How could I not feel this confidence?
That's true. That's true. Dustin's going to be the
Jake literally hypnotized us to pick the side, obviously. I still have no idea how I picked Phillip Rivers last week. I'm sitting here going through my stats. I literally through all my sheets and everything. I have Derek Carr ranked above Phillip Rivers in every single place I possibly could. I'm searching on my phone. I'm going through my notes on my phone. I'm I have Derek Carr above Phillip Rivers. And then they send me this thing, or Dustin gets real serious. He goes, Chase, come on. You picked Rivers. And I'm like, okay, if Dustin's going to go that flat and not even make a joke about it, I must have picked Rivers. And I'm really upset about it.
He wanted that extra payoff, and so
That's right.
but I'm with Chris this week, just in sheer confidence level. I think that the Allen Robinson side is going to prevail here.
He's going
Honestly, from a true matchup standpoint, I could care less because I want that game to end in a tie so that neither of them get to win. But I do have Allen Robinson on quite a few rosters, so that would be nice on two levels.
Yeah, well, we will see come Sunday who is the better prognosticator here. So until then, I think that's about the end of our show.
Wait. I got an invite for you guys. So, of course, I came on here and I had to invite Chris, or re-invite Chris, or make sure these down, I should say, on the 23rd. Then we have Sal, along with Nate Hamilton and Ray GQ on the 28th. And we want you guys to follow for the first episode of 2021. We want you guys to come on with Mike, myself, and Gooter Diddle.
The
to be the
inaugural 2021 episode when everything is going to be magically better because the
That's
calendar
right.
year turns over.
Yeah.
I think we would be foolish to say no, Dustin. What do you think?
I am so on board with this.
Well, we were afraid that, like, you guys would probably, or any podcast would ever hesitate to invite both Mike and I onto their podcast. It would just be an absolute nightmare for most places. So we figured we'd invite you guys on and we could just all have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally down.
I'm on
All
board.
right.
Lock us in.
I can't wait.
All right. Well, now that we've all basically sung Kumbaya together, do you want to take us out here, Dustin?
Yes. Chris, why don't you tell everyone one more time where people can find you out there before we sign off?
If you want to come laugh at me for the Allen Robinson call or any of my other takes tonight, come find me on Twitter at Chris Allen FFWX. If you don't want to yell at me for that, you can check out all of my writing and then come yell at me. You can catch all my writing over at 4for4, a Number Fire, and then also at RotoWorld.
Chase, how about you? Where can we find you?
Honestly, like, this isn't my show. This is all about Chris, man. You guys need to go check him out. Like, this is hands down. Chris is one of the people I look up to in the fantasy community, and I cannot wait to have him on the show on the 23rd. But seriously, you guys don't need to follow me. Just go follow him.
Such a gentleman. Jake, where can people find you?
Are you looking at me?
People can find. I'm always looking at you. People can find me at Jake Trowbridge on Twitter.
All right. And you can find our podcast at Drinking Fantasy on Twitter, and you can find me at FF Dusty Dog. And until next week, folks, keep drinking and talking fantasy football.
Cheers, FFers.
Peace.